Well, welcome everybody again to another Workshop Wednesday, which is all about casual conversations for serious workflows, brought to you by schoolofbookkeeping.com, where it allows you to learn QuickBooks your way. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. This is a new vantage point for Rachel. She had some uh, camera issues, so she pivoted, and I like this angle.
Yeah, well, it's what happens when my daughter uses my computer.
And we have a guest joining us today, Allison from Coral Tree. Or QBox? You want to talk? Introduce yourself for those.
Yeah, of course. I am the head of customer success at QBox. We've been around since 2012, helping share QuickBooks desktop files.
Excellent. And so we're going to be talking about 5 ways accountants and bookkeepers can use desktop and collaborate with their clients. So I definitely wanted to have Allison join us to talk about QBox, which is one of those 5 ways. So now, Rachel, pay attention.
I'm trying to put my phone on. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to do it the way Noah said to, and it's not working, Noah. It did.
All right. Well, what was I going to say? Now, Rachel, you are solely QuickBooks Online, right?
Mm-hmm.
You do not use desktop QuickBooks at all, correct?
I used to, and that's how I originally learned it. But no, I just do cloud-based now.
All right. So, in that regard, collaborating with your clients in QuickBooks Online is easy, and I'm using air quotes there for those listening to the podcast, because once you get that accountant invitation, as long as you have an active internet connection, you're in their QuickBooks, and that's one of the niceties about cloud accounting is that you don't have all of these environmental and Windows-based challenges with your setup and those types of things. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But before we get into that, I have a couple announcements that I wanted to talk about. So we did a workshop, probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago, about tags, right? And we talked significantly about tags going away and what you have to do to migrate your tags to custom fields. And you have to do that by the middle of this month. And wouldn't you know it, Intuit changed their stance on tags. So,
oh boy.
So we have to roll back all the things that we said about.
So not read only for the next 3 years, because I was going to set an alert at my daughter's high school graduation that would be the last time that I'd be able to access them.
Right. So, basically, and this is a testament, I guess, to Intuit listening to feedback, right? Because as they may or may not have been aware of the people that were using this feature, they heard from them after they announced that tags are going away, right? And they really didn't make it make the transition in such a way that they were usable to the same extent as what they were being used for inside of QuickBooks Online. So in light of all of that, Intuit decided not to make them read only. Basically, nothing's changing with regards to tags as of today. Who knows what happens tomorrow, right? But as of today, that deadline of the middle of the month where tags will go to read only is not happening. And the changes that they made with all of the flavors, the lower flavors of QuickBooks, Essentials, Simple Start, and Plus, having that new drop-down custom field still remains, right? So you actually got something out of Intuit through this whole debacle of that you do have that drop-down functionality as a custom field inside of all versions of QuickBooks for however many custom fields that you actually have in whatever flavor that you're on. So that's the update there. I don't know if we should just hide our video that we did or just make it
Yeah.
to that workshop. Thank God I
We're
didn't write a
curious
blog about it.
how many people maybe reached out to them, or if maybe it was a couple that were heavy users, or maybe they got a lot of inquiry about it from a lot of folks. I don't know. I'm really curious to know.
Well, when I worked there, right, I wouldn't. I mean, I wouldn't know about this particular circumstance, but this is not abnormal for Intuit to change a policy and then change their mind based on feedback.
That's good.
They did something with the accountant's copy transfer service, which we'll talk about here in a moment, where they were going to charge accountants and pro advisors per year, and they made that change. And me being the frontline employee that I was, heard all about it.
Oh yeah.
That this was not the right thing to do and that sort of thing. But they did change their mind and change that policy, right? And
That's
so
good.
I got to deliver
Really not
that
anything
message.
to ask for. That's
Yeah. It's a large company and they have a lot of customers and they have a lot of initiatives and they have a lot of feedback to sort through. So this is one of those things where someone made a decision to change something. It wasn't completely end to end seamless. Rich,
yeah.
wasn't a seamless transition, and people let their voices be heard, and lo and behold, it was heard, right? So kudos to Intuit for doing that, and shame on them for doing it in the first place.
Well, I don't know if we want to go that far. I mean, somebody was probably trying to, be more efficient and maybe do a or a money saving thing.
Yeah,
and,
I mean, it was a very lowly. It was a very. It wasn't a very broadly used feature, right? And in that regard, spending time developing and maintaining and doing those things is a challenge and a cost, right? So and it in the grand scheme of things, it does kind of smell like Dimensions, which is an Intuit Enterprise Suite feature, right? Which so having tags inside of your Simple Start, that kind of does the same thing that Dimensions does in a $20,000 software or whatever the price is, because we can never get a straight answer from Intuit to find out what the cost of Intuit Enterprise Suite is. But that kind of thing kind of seemed very similar, and it would be kind of difficult to sell that if it already existed in a different manner, right? So that's the news and updates out there with regards to the tags. We also wanted to make sure that people are aware of our premier cohort, which was going to be happening in July, where we're going to be talking with Ted McRae from Makers Hub. He's a certified prompt specialist.
the AI guy.
I am trying to make his official title promptologist.
Oh yeah,
and he might get some latex gloves out of the deal here. But he is a certified prompt specialist, and we're going to be doing a 4-week cohort at School of Bookkeeping, where we'll talk about AI tools and functions and how to create a prompt library for your practice.
Oh, that's so cool. And I'm already using some things that he suggested that I started doing. It's awesome.
Yeah. So here's a QR code for that, if you want to check that out. Now, let's move into the meat and potatoes of what we were going to be talking about here today. And let me quickly share my screen.
I'm really excited because I don't really know a lot about how this works. And I know some of these tools are really, they make it really simple.
Yeah. So the big dilemma here is when you're working with desktop clients, there is a file at play here, right? So unlike QuickBooks Online, where everything's stored up in the cloud, there's nothing to save, backup, store, or install. QuickBooks Desktop functions in a manner that you've got a program, QuickBooks, and a file, a company file, stored somewhere. And if you're in a multi-user environment where you have multiple people in your computer or in your business, and you want all of them to work in the same file, they have to be networked together, and there's an environment type of thing that that you need to establish ahead of time in order for that to happen. Now, here comes an outside employee or an outside person to help with the QuickBooks data entry, or whatever your manner of engagement is with accountants and bookkeepers and your clients. You need access to that file in order to view or change things and make those changes. So having that file and accessing that file is paramount, right? Because when a file is copied and put somewhere else and modified separately, now you have two separate files that really talk to each other, right? So it gets quite maddening to manage all of those things, especially if one person on one of the workstations is in a separate file than everybody else, and they've done all this work, and now they can't synchronize their changes, right? Because merging data is not something that QuickBooks does very well, right? You don't necessarily want. There are utilities out there that allow you to do that, but that's a headache in and of itself. So we wanted to kind of talk about the different ways that accountants and bookkeepers can support their clients using QuickBooks Desktop, because despite what the Intuit marketing says, they still sell QuickBooks Desktop. QuickBooks Desktop is still a significant amount. Allison, do you know like the breakdown of QuickBooks Desktop versus online?
We look every year, but I don't know the number off the top of my head.
It's not even probably, people that are acquiring it now. It's just people that are still using what they previously bought. I mean, they can still use it.
Yeah.
Kind of for quite some time. And what I was going to say is the alternative to what you're going to talk about, Allison, would be, this is what I thought when I came back to accounting. I thought, I'll just go into my client's office and I'll, that's what I'll do. Because I knew some people that did that working in accounting previously. And so I thought that would be my only alternative. But this is before I even understood about QuickBooks Online or what you're going to talk about with remote hosting. So that would be the way that you would go in and access their QuickBooks. And so I just wanted to point that out, because that with the nature of this desktop software, you'd have to physically go there and be in their QuickBooks.
Yeah, and that was the old days, right?
Yeah.
Putting on the mileage, going into the client's location, sitting at a designed workstation for the accountant to come in on a routine basis, whether it was once a week or once every other week or however frequently. But with remote access and being able to virtually be there, these other options have really kind of taken the forefront. Allison, would you agree that that's kind of how things have evolved? I'm sure 2020 and COVID probably accelerated this need, right?
Absolutely, 100%. We hear it all the time, and COVID really did amplify it, right? So COVID, we saw everybody going remote, having to share a company file. And for the small businesses, right, the people who can't afford a hosting solution, or maybe they don't need multi-user access, QBox is a great alternative for that.
All right, we're going to save all that for the end here. So let's talk about Accountant Edition, right? So Accountant Edition is one of the ways that you can access your client's company files concurrently with as an accountant. And we had done a workshop a while ago about the accountant's copy transfer service, and I'll mention that that's one of the options down here. But Accountant Edition allows you to have the Accountant Center, the client data review. These are functions that are going to be built into QuickBooks Desktop that aren't in QuickBooks Pro or Premier, and in some manner of enterprise. So you've got these batch entry of transactions. There's industry specific reports. So you have that as an addition sort, ED edition, not addition.
Oh, that's cool. So you can upload, or I don't know if upload's the right word, but access their customer file, but in the surrounding of your Accountant Edition, so you can perform some of those
Right.
functions.
So this example is, well, they're sending you the file,
Right.
whether it be a backup or portable file, you're restoring it, and you're able to use these functionalities.
You're able to open it in your Accountant
Right.
Edition. Yeah. Okay.
Now, when that's the case, right, whether you're using QBox or however you're getting that file back and forth, while you're working in the file, they shouldn't be, right? Because now you've got some challenges with multiple files, right? Because they've sent you the file, they could potentially have a problem and continue to work in the file while you're doing something in your Accountant Edition independently, because you've got essentially two QuickBooks files at two separate locations and they're not talking to each other.
Yeah.
Right. So when you do something inside of the Accountant Edition with all these cool tools of the client data review or these batch transactions, now you've got to make sure, or at least set the expectation, don't work in the file while I have I have it. Right. So that lends to, okay, well, how do we alleviate this challenge of two separate files, right? So using some kind of remote access service like Log Me In or Go to My PC, Team Viewer, those types of things, that is essentially taking out the drive time of what we were talking about before of, okay, there's a dedicated computer that you're able to access, but you're just accessing it as if you were sitting in front of that computer through the internet, right? So you have to have that established and set up and those types of things, and that computer is essentially unusable at that point,
right.
Because it's as if you're sitting in front of the computer just using the internet in order to control the mouse and those keyboards, right? So
and it does
that's
require a certain level of IT know-how on there.
And that's the biggest drawback, is that establishing all of that stuff first, and getting that situated. Sometimes, depending on the service, right, it could be attended mode or unattended mode, right, where you're able just to log in as long as that computer's connected, you can connect to it. But other times, like Zoom or something like that, right, you have to have somebody on the other end kind of pick up the phone to make sure that computer is accessible and open, right? If the computer's locked, oh no, you can't get get into the computer, right? I'm going to skip over QBox for a second, Allison. So, and I'll jump down to the accountant's copy transfer service. This is one of those things that is unique to the Accountant Edition, in that the client creates what's called a dividing date. And this is the answer. This is a QuickBooks file answer to be able to access two separate files concurrently and merge those changes back together. Right? So client creates a file. They choose this thing called a dividing date, and in essence, anything prior to that date, the accountant can touch, and everything after that date, the client can touch, right? So as long as those transactions don't cross that dividing date, right? It's a
Okay, so
border,
it's getting better. Like we're
right?
improving.
Right. This
Not
allows,
ideal, but it's getting better.
yes, this allows for two separate files, two locations, um, to be able to for the accountant to make the changes. And typically, Rachel, I'm sure you would agree. Typically, the accountant is looking at historical transactions,
Mhm.
right? So they're not necessarily dealing with the day-to-day entry of sales and those types of things. So normally, that dividing date is just fine,
Yeah.
right? You're reconciling bank accounts, transactions that are dated prior to that date anyway, right? And then the goal is that there's a file that's then sent back to the client that will include all of the changes that the accountant made, and then those accountants changes get imported, right? So in the grand scheme of things, that sounds great on paper. But as a support agent in the in the Pro Advisor support channel, it was very hit or miss,
Mm.
right? Because the biggest challenge that I saw is that the file was not in the same condition of where that accountant's copy left, right? So either they removed the restrictions because they needed to make a change that required that dividing date to be removed, which it tells them, hey, any likelihood of your accountant's changes coming back into this file are slim and none, right? Like there's there's two chances there, slim and none, or slim and fat, right? So it doesn't warn the accountant that they've done that. So they go on their merry way doing their thing in the accountant's file, not knowing that they've canceled the accountant's copy changes, and then
Oh gosh.
the client then goes, oh, well, I'll just put it back in that condition and create another accountant's copy, dividing date, thinking that that will fool QuickBooks. Well, no, no, no.
Yeah.
It will not, right? It's like it's going to come back and go, this is not my beautiful house. This is not my beautiful wife. And go, I'm not going to bring in those changes.
And they could likely create just a chain reaction of
Exactly. And then that causes the accountant to get upset with them and say, hey, why did you do that? And think, well, I needed
yeah.
to make a change. Or they've gone in and done a modification to a transaction, and then all of their reconciliations that are attempted to be brought in don't come in because the change that they made. And it's
Yeah.
very difficult to manage this when you never know what clients are going to do.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I chose not to do that. And it was because I didn't have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lists like this to show the different options of what I could do. And so I had kind of heard a couple of those horror stories, and I was like, forget it. Nope, not going to do that.
So the best way, and this is what we're getting to here, is that the best way to be able to access as an accountant is to be there, right? To be able to be there in the same file and ensure that the changes that you're making as an accountant are in that file, right? And the likelihood of problems occurring when you have separate files is alleviated because of that, right? So one other option is cloud hosting, right? So this is the Hannah Montana of of QuickBooks Desktop, where you have the best of both worlds of the cloud access of QuickBooks Online and the desktop functionality of QuickBooks Desktop, right? So you're able to take that QuickBooks Desktop, put it in a cloud hosting environment, and as long as you can access that cloud hosting environment, it's as if you're sitting in front of QuickBooks, but you're not sitting at a dedicated machine inside the client's office. It's some cloud hosted environment, which is great. However, the biggest drawback of that is the cost and expense to set that up, because those cloud hosts don't operate on their own, for they don't do that out of the kindness of their heart. Every login typically requires its own subscription. So not only are you paying for multi-user access of QuickBooks Desktop and the number of users that are able to get in concurrently, but you're also paying for cloud access to that environment, right? So the last option that we want to talk about is just to simplify all of this with QBox. So, Allison, what is QBox?
So QBox will share your company file with remote users. And unlike the other ones, right, you're working from the file from your own computer. So only one person can work in the file at a time. Once they're done working, QBox will then sync your company file to all of your other remote users so that they have the exact same copy of the file you just worked in.
Okay.
And unlike unlike with hosting, right? You can print locally because it is a local file. You can print locally. You can export to Excel, right? So you don't have to ask the hosting company to add on other things to
Yeah.
your subscription. Your attachments are all local to your computer and no latency, right? So unlike when you're remoting into somebody's computer, you're having to rely on their internet, right? With QBox, it is your own local environment. And again, print locally, backup locally, everything's done from your desktop.
Right. So I always thought of this as, the best day analogy that I could come up with QBox is like QBox is like a library book, right? When you go to the library, you check out the library book. Nobody else can get the book until you bring it back.
Yep.
Right. So does that kind of resonate with you, Allison?
It does. And two, we have notifications, right? So even if you bypass the first notification that I have the library book checked out, as soon as you open the file, it will tell you again in big red letters, I have the file checked out. You can only continue as a read only. So you can view historical information. You just won't be able to see the live edits that I'm making while I have the file checked out.
Okay, so that was one of the questions that I had, and I think one of the challenges I guess with this solution is the multi-user access. So other people will be able to see the file even if it's checked out by the accountant.
Correct. Yep. You can always go in as a view only.
Okay, I thought it would just say nope, you can't access it. The library book's not been returned yet by your accountant.
Nope, you can always access it. And while you're in it, because you are in read only, you can print locally if you wanted to print a report. If you wanted to build your report within QuickBooks, you can also do that. But again, it's historical information. It's not live real-time edits.
Can you export to Excel?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
See, that's great because a lot of times, somebody may not need to go in to, do anything or create any new transactions, but they might need to grab something to export and do some other project. And so that's really great to be able
Yep.
to at least access it read only.
Absolutely. Yep. Or even if the accountant is working on it, right? But at the client site, their client calls in and says, hey, did you get my check? And they want to go in and quickly check, right?
Yeah, because there's a lot of that too. Let me just go in and look and see if that's there. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's really good to know, because I had thought, and not not using QuickBooks or QBox for my client access, I didn't know what the experience of the clients would be when they try to access it. I knew the general concept of QBox, but not necessarily what it was actually what they would actually experience. Now, in comparison to some of these other options, like a cloud hosting, how does this compare cost wise for an accountant, Allison?
Yep. So we're not a per user license seat. So for us, we charge by the number of folders. And so an accountant sharing with the client, we would recommend its own separate folder because you want your client only to have access to their specific files, right? So in that use case, each folder is $20 a month or $200 a year. if you're a small business and you just want to share with your team members who are remote, you usually only need one folder. That one folder has 10 gigabytes of storage capacity, so you can put multiple QuickBooks files in one folder. And that's going to be $20 a month or $200 a year, unlimited amount of shared users.
Okay, reasonable.
Yeah. I mean, comparing that to, a cloud hosting environment where it's, $50 to $60 a month just
Yeah.
for the cloud access, and then you have to up the number of users if they need to be in concurrently. That can get really expensive.
Yeah,
So this
that's
is
what it was for me when I first started. And I thought, okay, well, I'm not going to go into clients' offices. I am going to do this remote hosting. And the sticker shock was really hard for me when I was just starting. I was like, oh my gosh, this is how much it's going to cost. Let me check out QuickBooks Online. That's literally why I started doing that. But you guys, we haven't even discussed the best benefit of this. Can you guys think about what I'm going to say?
No, I'm.
Yeah.
Okay, before we'd have to go into clients' offices. This allows us to expand our service area anywhere to be able to log into their QuickBooks desktop at a reasonable rate. I mean, that's huge for all of us independent firm owners and bookkeepers and accountants. It's a big, big deal.
Yeah, that is a good point, because, when you are needing to get into your client's location and limited by the mileage that you're able to drive, then that's it. That is a huge bonus.
Because back when I worked in corporate accounting before, and we'd have somebody more senior come in once a week or once a month. That was totally that model. They were only limited to their regional area. So this really has changed the scope of how we do business for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Even
go ahead.
Yeah, one of our customers, he lives in LA for most of the year, but he takes the summers in the Keys, and he doesn't take his laptop, he doesn't take his computer. He has everything set up at his home office. He turns it on, he lets QBox run with all the latest files, and he's good to go for the summer.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's incredible, and it's really to be able to do this and not have to just be in QuickBooks Online. By the way, there's a lot of people that I know that operate with a lot of clients in QuickBooks Online, and they use QBox to service their desktop. So they have both, and these tools enable them to do that in a cost-effective way. Yep. So you really have a lot of flexibility to decide, what types of clients you want to service.
Right. So I feel like desktop is that guy in Monty Python, right, where they're bringing out your dead, and he's saying, "I'm not dead yet. I feel happy. I feel like taking a walk." Right. There still is life left in desktop, for the foreseeable future, until there's not. Right. So,
yeah. I mean, eventually at some point, everything's going to be zipping around in the cloud. I don't know, 100 years from now, but maybe before then. But I mean, until then, I think as long as we're all, working, and probably even our kids, I mean, there's still going to be things living in desktop software that somebody will still need and use, and there'll be a need to access that.
Yeah, the mindset there when I worked there was, as long as there's a hard drive and a Windows-based computer, there will be a need for QuickBooks Desktop, until there's not. Right? I mean, other factors are probably going to change before to drive that change. Sure. Right. Well, Allison and Rachel, appreciate you joining us here today on the workshop. And next week, we're actually going to be talking about unbilled charges and how do you clean those up in a desktop migration to QuickBooks Online. So, Allison, any final thoughts from you?
Nope. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time on the Workshop Wednesday, and we hope you all have a great day. And I'm stalling for time because I'm looking for the, the outro video. There it is.